So if anybody starts a company in general, right, the first thing you have to determine is like, are you solving a problem? So sometimes there's a want, sometimes there's a need. And I think where things can be a little slower going is like, well, does somebody really want this? Is there a market that you're addressing that's like dying for this? Is it solving some major problem? And on the business side, there was a glaring problem that we knew we could solve. On the user side, we made some assumptions, right? Based on our experience in gaming and shopping rewards. We knew there was a market. It was just a nascent market that no one's ever really tapped into. But we did take the biggest leap of faith saying, we kind of know consumers and what they want. We've been doing this for 20 years in some way, shape, or form. So let's go put together the best recipe that we've seen work and let's bring that to market. And then let's see how it does. You never totally know. But what it told us is that people naturally wanted it on the consumer side. And we filled a really important need on the business side.
Hey there, hot messes. Welcome to Success of a Hot Mess, where we celebrate the art of juggling life's chaos and coming out on top. I'm Stacey Isaacs, your host and resident rock star lawyer, dance mom, and survivor. We're going to dive into candid conversations about conquering challenges, embracing our unique selves, and finding success in the beautiful mess of it all. Welcome to Success of a Hot Mess podcast, brought to you by workinjuryrights.com. I'm Stacey Isaacs, and today we're joined by Josh Lamb, co-founder and CEO of High Rewards. Good morning, Josh.
Good morning.
I understand you have a nickname.
Is this for my wife?
Yes.
Oh, Hot Josh. Is that the, yeah.
That's it. So thank you for coming on, Hot Josh. I really appreciate it. Before we dive into what High Rewards is all about, can you tell me the genesis of that nickname?
Yeah. So my wife, thought it would be funny to start this thing, and she created an Instagram feed called Hot Josh, at Hot Josh. And it's basically awkward pictures of me, intentionally, goofy, whatever. And she just basically posts the most ridiculous photos of me possible. So it's completely ironic, just so everyone knows. And I'll tell you a funny story quickly. So I was at South by Southwest at a big event a few weeks ago. I'm sitting there, we're at this event talking, and all of a sudden I hear from behind me, Hot Josh. And I turn around and I don't know this person, but apparently they follow this channel, right?
You're famous.
I'm somewhat famous. But yeah, I wouldn't say famous. I would say more infamous, I guess.
Well, I liked Allie already, but now that I hear her sense of humor, I like her even more.
Yes.
When you say awkward pictures of you, like I have a friend that takes pictures of her husband sleeping in various parts of the house, and he's always got like his mouth hanging open.
Yeah.
Is it stuff like that?
No, it's worse. It's more like I'm doing something silly in the pool, wearing goggles, like, stupid stuff where I look completely awkward. Or, I did this thing where I did this elf on the shelf thing during COVID when we were all stir crazy, and like I dressed up as the elf on the shelf and I did a bunch of funny things so that some of those shots are in there, stuff like that. I'm a little goofy sometimes, so.
I like it. I think you should actually trademark the name.
Yeah.
And get merch. Hot Josh.
There we go.
It's very catchy.
I love it. That would be fun.
Tell me what is High Rewards? Put it in layman's terms for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar to a lot of different kinds of rewards apps that people may have used or know about, like Fetch or Ibotta, or I was a CMO at a company called Shopkick, which was like the original shopping rewards app. Those are really focused on kind of traditional markets, like grocery.
So wait, is
like
Rakuten one of those?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Rakuten's another one. And then, one of the other elements in being in the industry, I saw one of the issues was they're all kind of fighting over the same pie, right? And it's a bit of a race to the bottom. The consumers get less and less rewards because the value keeps getting tighter and tighter. And there's very little loyalty for those kinds of apps. It's really hard to keep people with you because it's like, well, I can go get that next door, right? So, I saw this space in the 21 and older market, including cannabis, hemp-derived products, alcohol, tobacco alternatives, all those kinds of things that have a lot of advertising restrictions.
Does that include pornographic?
We don't. No, we don't have that. We may have, partners like DraftKings or things like that, just from a gambling side. But yeah, no, we're not doing anything in that realm. And it's really focused on retail, so the idea here is, if you understand those platforms, you'll easily understand the dynamic of what we're doing. Though, because we are creating a new island and we're reaching a whole new customer base and we're reaching new partners that are filling the supply of like, hey, if you shop with us at, let's say, Move is a partner in Florida, for example, which is owned by a company called Verano. That's national. They have another retail brand called Zenleaf. And you go shop at one of those stores, you literally could earn $10, $15 from a visit, to one of those stores, where if you go into a rewards platform, typically, that would take you like months to get to that amount. So, and part of that is we're paying massive rewards because we're also not competing against a million other companies, right? And there's a massively underserved consumer market. Like, they don't get marketed to, one, because in cannabis especially, and you can't market to them. The channels are basically zero. You can't be on Instagram or Facebook or Google if you have a retail or especially products. So we're creating like a whole new island, a whole new marketplace where people can get massive rewards, where right now they can't get any other than maybe in a typical, rewards program like that you would have at the dispensary. But we kind of offer one that's like for every location and for everyone. And then the other side of that, one of the big issues in rewards in general is that they kind of have one utility, meaning like, okay, when I go buy new deodorant, I'll go use it, but then there's no other reason to really use the app. So what we did, one of my other partners that I co-founded this with, Rob, he actually was the president of Sony Mobile Games, and he was Electronic Arts. And Sony Mobile Games, give you an idea, like Monopoly Go and like all of these like mobile app games. So we brought in a big gamification element to the app to make it something that people could earn points every day, all day, doing all sorts of different things versus just when they shop. So we've made it a much like stickier, fun place to where you can make literally tens of dollars just downloading and playing games, or, inviting your friends, or watching videos, or taking quizzes. So there's like a bunch of different ways to be able to earn toward the goal. So it's been pretty awesome, actually. It's better than expected thus far on like how both sides, the users of the app and then our partners, are just thrilled because they've never had a place where they could kind of come together like this.
So how did you identify this underserved market of people that purchase cannabis and alcohol online? Because that sounds very genius to me. Mm-hmm. Identifying this demographic of people that didn't already have this sort of rewards program available to them.
Yeah, so it was interesting. It's something that we kind of talked about during the boom of cannabis when it was initially like becoming like a bigger thing, and stock market and companies going public in like 2019. It's something we were talking about when I was at Shopkick, for example. But what we realized is that Huggies isn't going to be next to a joint, right? So like Procter & Gamble wants nothing to do with
not
it.
The best parent.
Yeah,
right?
There's a big Canamon community, and I would say it's better than wine drinking. You don't get in. Yeah, anyway, we'll get into that. But for the space, what we realized is there's 70 million legal cannabis consumers in America, just the United States.
Like, do you mean medical usage or
medical rec? It's just legal consumption, meaning they go to a place and they buy it legally versus the gray market, if you will, right? And things like that. Or the quote unquote, the industry calls it legacy market. It's a nice way of saying black market. But anyway, you don't want to say that because that sounds really negative. But within the space, they buy this stuff and it's worth about $50 billion alone, just that market. And now with the THC infused drinks that you can go get at Total Wine today, that market is growing like crazy because people don't want to get drunk anymore. They don't want hangovers. The younger generation is just the beer and alcohol categories are getting hammered right now.
It's so funny. Like when I was growing up, we had keg parties. Yeah. And I didn't even like the beer, but I don't know. That was what was available to us. Yeah. Now they don't have to deal with any of that. My only concern would be like all the eating that one might do after consumption.
Yeah. But yes, but it is so targeted now on there's these things in which you can use our app for. We created a bud tender, it's called AI, where you can chat with the bud tender in our app and ask it questions.
Someone on your end is incredibly clever, like a bud tender. That's genius.
I didn't make that up, but I did make up the AI part.
Now, is this bud tender like somebody in like the Philippines or something, or it's
no? So the dispensaries that you might go into, the people that work there that are bud tenders, so it's like going to a bar and saying, make me a cocktail, right? They're the ones that are helping you curate what to get you.
Gotcha.
So they dubbed that name. But what we did was there's a lot of questions like that. Like, are there specific, strains of cannabis that will keep me from getting the munchies, right? Getting hungry. And there are actually. There's so many derivatives and it's been so medicalized, if that's a word, that you can really pinpoint exactly what you want. And there's all sorts of modalities yeah.
No, just real quick story is that someone who shall go unnamed gave me a really tiny amount of some that was, I think he said, caffeinated or some sort of energy component to it. And I nearly beat up my husband that night. Like I became so enraged and filled with adrenaline. It was crazy. I don't know what that stuff was. Probably not any of your partners sell it.
No, that doesn't line up. Because usually with it's probably more of the other stuff that were in it than the cannabis itself, if there was cannabis in it, because that's not really the reaction cannabis ever drives. It's just in general, the market is getting so much more mainstream, and there's actually a significant female audience for this, much larger than I think most people think. Our user base right now is probably 65% women. And
this is people who utilize your app, correct?
Yeah, I use High Rewards on a daily basis. When you think about your phone, there's probably 100 apps or more on your phone. And you probably, if you really think about it, use maybe 7, 8 of those, once a week or multiple times a week. What we're finding is the way we've kind of gamified it and we've added a lot of value in it is that we're quickly becoming one of those core apps that people use every day. So just to give you an idea, you're not necessarily shopping for alcohol or cannabis every single day, but with all this stuff we have in there, we're averaging where people use the app 31 times a month. So So that means they're literally going into the app at least 31 times a month. Like what you would typically see with most apps, they're hoping for once a month.
Well, that would mean
So
at least once a day. People are
exactly.
Okay.
Or
So
more.
besides alcohol, cannabis, and games, is there anything else on the platform?
Yeah, so we've added hemp-derived drinks. So those are the ones that are like Total Wine and ABC Liquors in Florida, and then it's also in Binny's and around Chicagoland and like all the major liquor stores. So we partnered with two big brands. One is called, which you've probably heard of, Cheech and Chong. Cheech and Chong is literally like a 50-year-old, well-known, just from Cheech Marin and Tommy Chong, just from the movies back in the day and stand-up. But they have an amazing brand that they create cannabis products that are sold in dispensaries, but then they also have the hemp-derived products, which you can get at, the Total Wines and so forth. So we're working with them right now on their drink line across the country. And then we just launched with another brand called Happy Flower, which is another hemp-derived drink that's also in the same locations oftentimes. And that's owned by Tilray, which they are a publicly traded Canadian company. And they actually bought some brands from Anheuser-Busch, AmBev, in order to enter the space a couple of years ago. In this vertical, the drink category is just exploding.
That's interesting. So when did this idea kind of formulate in your mind? Was this something that came about during COVID when you were home all the time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it crossed my mind then. I talked about it with some people, but it was like too big a barrier to entry. I didn't really know the space at all. I didn't know the regulated space at all at the time. I got into like a couple startups because I was intrigued by it. And one of them was a fintech app, which kind of dealt with some more regulated elements, which I kind of got my feet wet and kind of understanding like the advertising restrictions and things like that. But then I joined a company called LeafWell, which is the number one medical card issuer using telemedicine across the country. And that's where I really saw the challenges of how do we find new people? You can't market anywhere. What do you do? And then we at LeafWell, they partnered a lot of times doing co-marketing with dispensaries who also have the challenge, right? So I saw the issue where dispensaries were desperate. They're like, how can we find new customers? How can we keep customers coming back? Like we cannot talk to them if they're not already like signed up in email and things like that. So that's where I'm like, oh my God, this would be the perfect place to have something like this because we can own the destination of where people go and transact and communicate directly with each other, right? And so now that's kind of where that came from. And I'm like, but no market exists, right? So we literally had to make up a market. There was no pricing model, on the business side. There was no like, well, what do you charge, right? So we literally had to build everything. And what's really cool about this space is that everyone's trying to solve these problems. So partners are partners, meaning like dispensary partners and brands and stuff are much more forthcoming about information to kind of help find something that works for everybody. So it wasn't one of those, and we did a ton of research too, but we really built it in a way that's a win-win for everybody. So the partners save a fraction of the cost and we don't charge them unless they actually have a new customer or the customer buys a specific product. So there's no risk for them upfront. We also avoid any technical integration, which is huge. So we don't actually have to like spend months like trying to build ourselves into their ecosystem because we crowdsource it from the consumer directly with receipts and e-receipts and things like that. So it makes the barrier to entry very low. So we can literally start with a partner in a day, where a lot of times in something like this, it could take months to try to get something going.
So High Rewards just launched in October 2024. You already have over 46,000 users. My question is there a charge to the user to obtain the app?
Nope, zero. It's completely free to use. Everything it's all quid pro quo. The consumer gets paid for every single thing they do in the app. So you open the app every day, you get points. You share it with a friend and they join, you get points. You watch a video, you get points. You walk into a store and check in, like literally tap the button that you're in the store, you get points. You upload a receipt, you get points. So everything is just points, points, points. And then they get to redeem those points for gift cards to like Amazon or Starbucks or Nike or Sephora is a big one with the female community. Victoria's Secret's another big one. I did not see this coming, by the way. I assumed it was going to be all Amazon or Visa gift cards, but there's a lot of that. But, the reason is when I created something, I told my partners, and when we were developing like what we wanted to do, I said, I don't want to ask anyone to do anything that they don't get rewarded for. Like, I want that to be the feedback loop. Like, everything I do, it might not be huge all the time, right? But you're always going to get something, and it's fun. It's fun because every time you enter a point, your little dial goes a little further towards your goal, right? It's like a fun sound. And we really tried to make it something that was super fun and engaging. And then it wasn't something that you were like, worried about hiding, or anything like that. Or what are they doing with my information? Like none of that. So everything is extremely protected on the data side too. We don't sell anybody's information. We're not data brokers. This is all kind of within our walled garden. So our partners understand though that we can give them kind of conversion data and all that stuff, but we're not actually like giving any personal information.
So who is the tech genius? Is it you or your partner?
Yeah, so I'm definitely more strategic. I'm not a developer. One of my other co-founders, so there's three of us, Sean Barkle, he's really helping leading the engineering team. And then I'm really involved with product with him. So he and I kind of run product and where things are going to go. And then Rob is really focused on partnerships. And he's the one who's bringing in all the biggest cannabis players and hemp derived players and alcohol and all of the other things that are coming in. And also brings in a lot of the gamification elements that they saw work really well in traditional mobile apps.
So that is tremendous growth. I mean, it took my business where we just had our 10-year anniversary and, it was slow and steady. What do you think is the greatest contributing factor to this crazy growth?
So if anybody starts a company in general, right, the first thing you have to determine is like, are you solving a problem, right? Are you solving a need? Yeah. So sometimes there's a want, sometimes there's a need, right? And I think where things can be a little slower going is like, well, does somebody really want this? Is there a market that you're addressing that's like dying for this? Is it solving some major problem? And on the business side, right, there was a glaring problem that we knew we could solve. On the user side, we made some assumptions, right, based on our experience in gaming and shopping rewards, that we knew there was a market. It was just a nascent market that no one's ever really tapped into. But we did take the biggest leap of faith saying, we kind of know consumers and what they want. So we've been doing this for 20 years in some way, shape, or form. So let's go put together the best recipe that we've seen work and let's bring that to market. And then let's see how it does. So there was a little bit of you never totally know. But what it told us is that people naturally wanted it on the consumer side. And we filled a really important need on the business side. So that's the perfect marketplace, right? We just set that up and we let them interact, right? So partners say, hey, I want more customers, so I'm going to offer 10,000 points to come in if you're a new consumer. Or I'm a brand. I have no way of telling people that my brand exists at this location. now I have a place I can tell people and then say, hey, if you try my brand, I will literally pay you to do that. And people are like, sure, why not? And for the consumer, it's like options. They don't have to do any of these things. It's just like, hey, if I do it, I know at least what I'm going to get for it. Right. So I like the idea of like everybody wins in this scenario. We're just setting up the table so people have options. That's it.
So how did you get word out there? Because your business, obviously, you're not a law firm like me with tremendous competition, and we have to do a lot of social media. We have to do podcasts, How did you get the word out?
Well, I'll give a good, bad, and the ugly, to it all. So in our past, Sean, who's also a genius, who's on the tech side, but great, what you call a growth hacker. He's worked with multiple apps. He's been able to get to number one in the app store with multiple apps in different verticals, just figuring out ways of like driving growth. Right. And he and I both did something early with TikTok when we were at Shopkick and drove a ton of growth before it was like as mainstream and it was all commoditized the way it is today. So we were able to growth hack TikTok. So we had this plan originally to tap into all these influencers that we knew that had, literally 100 million followers and things like that. What we didn't think would happen would be that TikTok would be so quick to throttle. And for those that don't know what that means, so basically at the very beginning, when we were first testing this in our beta phase, we started in June in just iOS of last year, just to kind of see what would happen and test things. And we went out and we had all these influencers, probably aggregate of 100 million followers between them. There's like seven influencers. We're all going to launch it at the same time, have this big influx, right? We turn it on. They get in less than 10 seconds, each of them probably got to like 10,000 views, 20,000 views. And then all of a sudden it just stopped. And it's because, TikTok was like, hey, we want to be paid for this. What are you doing? And so those kinds of controls really limit some of the virality you can try to drive organically. So essentially you have to pay to play now, like everywhere. They blocked that down. They're like, hey, we're not giving away anything for free. So we ran into a major wall there. So then we had to be much more targeted. And eventually we were able to do and figure out ways of marketing through traditional avenues because we aren't plant touching, they say. We're ancillary to the market. So we could advertise on Meta and on Google, things like that. But again, we had to be very careful about that. We couldn't lean into the regulated element too much. So on that standpoint, we were able to break through and start seeding audience in specific states. That's the other thing. We have to be very specific about the states that we're trying to reach people in. We want to keep the fact that they're, in Florida. We want to focus on that market because we have Move as a partner. And we don't care about, let's say, Washington State because we don't have any partners there right now. So advertising just everywhere doesn't make sense. So for us, we had to seed audience, and then it's creating a really strong referral strategy. So invite a friend. One of the biggest things when you're trying to grow an audience, as you can probably imagine, is word of mouth, right? So for us, word of mouth is worth $5 a person. So you download the app right now, Stacey, you invite a friend, they sign up, you get $5, they get $5 immediately.
Oh, I'm checking out this app as soon as this podcast concludes. And
but virality is the hardest thing to do. You can only try to set the table. There is no specific formula for virality. You have to tap into a certain thing and kind of get a little lucky. But I would always say you have to plan to put a little media behind it just to seed the audience at the beginning. To get viral is really, really hard to drive a fast growing audience. Like yesterday, we put in a new method and we went from 500 installs a day to 3,000 yesterday alone.
That's insane.
So, yeah. So, at the rate we're going, I could check the data, but I mean, we're going to go from averaging about 10,000 people a month, which is great, new users, to maybe 100,000 a month.
Yeah, it sounds like you have the formula down.
Yeah, but it's constant testing. There is no like, hey, here's the way. Otherwise, everyone would do it. So you have to try different things, and you have to be willing to take risks, calculated risks, but risks nevertheless.
So, you mentioned, am I providing something that people really need? I think you said that earlier.
Yeah.
What do you think TikTok provided that people needed, except for, lots of wasted time scrolling?
I would say it's that escape.
And the attention, maybe?
Yeah, it's the escape. It's the same reason you would watch a movie and just kind of zone out, sit on the couch, and just kind of like lose yourself in that. I think that's what people find themselves in on those viral death loops of just scrolling and scrolling. It's just that, you know what, I just want to think about something else for a minute. But the problem is that it's so engaging that people get lost in that, where they might have thought, oh, I'll do this for a minute. They end up doing it for like 20 or an hour. And that's where it's like a bit of a problem. It's always a balance, right? Because as any kind of app or any kind of consumer facing thing, your whole goal is to keep people's attention as long as possible, right? As a business, to try to make money, right? Because the longer you death scroll in TikTok, the more ads you see and the more they get paid, right? So the incentive structure for them is like, well, how do we keep America completely locked down 24 hours a day is like what they're going for. Now we don't have those kind of, I don't know, kind of evil means like behind it. Like we're not trying to do that, but we are trying to create something fun for people that they can get paid for. Because at least from our point of view, we're literally paying people money. Like they're literally getting money. You're not getting anything from TikTok other than like an escape, right? So for us, at least we pay you like for everything you do. So it's like, hey, this is very much above board, right? We're not sneaking you, and you accept terms and all of a sudden you've given your life away, like
so
those platforms.
You're not charging people to obtain the app.
No.
You're not charging the retailers, correct?
No, the retailers aren't charged to be in the app, but for the different incentives, the points that they offer, we set those up, and then we do make money off of those conversions. But
you got to make money somewhere, so I'm trying to see where.
Yeah, and then when you watch videos and you download and play games, we get paid by the game companies and the advertisers. But again, it's like the definition of quid pro quo, right? And it's all above board. It's like the user knows what the deal is and the seller knows what the deal is. So it's just one of those where it's like, hey, if you want to do this, you got 5 minutes to kill. Hey, download a fun new game like Monopoly Go and make $5.
Do you have Scrabble on there?
We do. It comes in and out. So it just depends. So we have a partner that supplies the different apps, but there are a lot of the biggest ones, the ones that you see all the time, those are usually in there. The key is that what some people don't realize is you have to allow tracking in those apps so that they know what level you get to give you the points. And sometimes people are like, don't track, but then they can't get the points because then they don't know, did they actually use the app or not? Gotcha. So sometimes there's a little confusion there, but in general, it is an amazing tool because people love it because they're just playing games and getting paid for it. Like literally it's the ultimate win-win. So we've really been promoting that because we're like, everyone loves it because it's easy and they're playing like a casual game, right?
Is that your slogan? It's a win-win?
It should be. Our first slogan was light up, cash in, but like we're so much beyond just cannabis that we probably do need to come up with a more generic. That's why we're called high rewards, right? Not canna rewards, because big rewards, but it's that kind of, double entendre there too.
So what is your end goal, Hot Josh? What do you want to see become of High Rewards? Do you want it to get bought by some major?
Yeah, that's the most likely outcome. So in the next few years, just as, one of the reasons we started it when we did, was also the market, and trying to read the tea leaves, right? Of this isn't going away. This is only, getting less and less, regulated, or it's opening up in more and more markets. So we wanted to be in the pole position, kind of dominating the space. And then eventually when, the risks are highly mitigated for these larger companies, they're going to want this market, and they're going to want, because they want to grow, right? And they're going to want this consumer base that they'll be able to also market to. So eventually it'll be to, probably get acquired. My goal is by the time I need real HR, we've sold it.
It's funny. I remember saying, at what point can we just get HR? First, it was like 25 employees, then it's 40, and we still don't have HR. And we
avoid it as long as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What is the best tip you can give someone who wants to start an app?
Really understand the problem that you're trying to solve. And is there a market there? So do research. Don't think just because it's a good idea, right? There's a lot of good ideas that die because they don't really solve a problem. And I've been through that myself. I created some really cool stuff when I was younger, like in shoppable video before that existed in like 2011. But I was too early and there wasn't like the demand for it. Now it's like everywhere, within like, it's going into TikTok and Pinterest, and Amazon has live feeds and like all this stuff. But like when I was doing it, it was more of like, I thought it's something they should do because it was like, hey, monetize your videos, like buy the shirt you see in the show while you're watching, But like the market didn't really connect the dots yet. They didn't really know how to support it at the time, right? So it's like a great idea can be a great idea, but the timing of it also has to align. And it has to be a real problem at that time, right? Not what could be an opportunity. So sometimes people are like, okay, this is just a great idea. People will love this. And it's like, yeah, maybe, but like, is it enough to where they're like willing to pay you for it? Or a B2B partner is really willing to pay you for it? Because that push to shove goes, are they really willing to pay? And they're only going to pay if they really see that it solves an issue for them, because they have a million choices to make, right? So I would say anybody creating anything is like, what's the void I fill that has to be filled?
I like that. I think that translates to every industry, every business. I love speaking to entrepreneurs. Clearly, you are one. And shout out to Allie for suggesting having you on Success of a Hot Mess. And before we wrap up, what do you like to do in your spare time?
I wish I had more, but I love football. That's huge. I'm a big college football fan. I grew up in Michigan, big Michigan fan. Pickleball when I can. My knees, though, like I'm getting older, it's harder and harder. My favorite thing, honestly, to do, which I don't get to do very often, is just sit in my own pool and have a darty.
I like a good darty every now and again.
It's my favorite. I want to go to bed by like 9 at night if I can, and have fun during the day, and and not have to run everywhere. Right, that's the other thing. So that's what I like to do with the free time I get, and exercise. I have to exercise, otherwise I start losing my mind.
Same, and you also have children, right?
I have 3. Yeah.
I forgot about those. I think our children know each other.
Yeah, my oldest Madden is going to Penn State in the fall, or the summer, I should say. She's in business school. starting in summer. And then, I have a soon to be sophomore at MSD. And then Pierce is going into 8th grade.
Oh, he's going into 8th. Okay.
Yeah.
So my daughter's in 8th, but she knows Pierce.
Yeah, I don't know if that's good or bad, but he's a little notorious, but I like to think he's a good boy. He's just, a 13-year-old boy, and the decisions that go with that.
There you go. Well, Josh, thank you so much for coming on. For all my listeners, they can just go into the App Store and look up High Rewards.
Yeah.
Start making some money on their purchases.
Yeah, and the biggest thing that we're doing right now is when they do that, they invite the first friend that joins. They get $5, and the friend gets $5 like immediately, and then it's unlimited the number of people that they invite. They would just have to reach a certain number of points, which you do with like one trip to the dispensary or something like that, and then you get $5 over and over and over. It's an easy way to make a lot of money quickly.
Okay, I'm doing it literally when we hang up. Thank you so much for coming on. Again, Success of a Hot Mess, brought to you by workinjuryrights.com. I'm Stacey Isaacs, and thanks for coming, Hot Josh Lamb.
Thank you, Stacey. Great to be with you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Success of a Hot Mess. If you loved what you heard today, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a beat. And hey, sharing is caring. Share this podcast with your friends, family, and anyone who could use a dose of inspiration. Until next time, keep rocking those hot mess moments with style and grace. Cheers.